All right, today I have an interesting cat I would like to introduce. He was positive for FELV, but Armadillo, he's 2 years old. He was tested months ago, from what I understand, and he had come up positive. It lives in the bone marrow. It is a feline leukemia, and there are no real telltale signs of it except for secondary, perhaps infection. There could be a spinal infection. There could be liver problems, eyesight problems. If it gets really bad, it'll go to the brain. The first test we ran in-house was positive. The second test we ran through a lab was negative. The third we ran in-house came up positive. So basically it's one of those things that I think they call it like a false positive, I'm not sure. But basically, if anybody does come up with a positive, there's more likelihood that you're going to have to retest, I believe, every 90 days, just to see if it is recessive. But basically a cat gets infected, usually because they're outside, and there's another cat that's outside that has not been vaccinated against it, and they can basically transmit it through either saliva, urine, any fecal, or blood, of course. But the saliva, I think, is the one that's a little bit sketchy because it is easily transmitted. Unfortunately, the virus does not live long outside the host. So basically, within a couple of minutes, it pretty much is no longer viable as far as being transmitted. Like I said, I've never really done an FELV cat. I might have done one a few years ago, but I think things have changed as far as the outlook on them. I think back in the old days, if any cat was tested and had a positive, the majority of times they would be euthanized. Unfortunately, most of them were kittens. We have a pair out back. There's a father, Fat Cheeks Tom, and his daughter are both positive for FELV. So it doesn't necessarily just come from the mother. It can come from the father, transmitted through the pregnancy. But like I said, this is a new one for me. I don't interact with them quite as frequently as probably I should. Usually we try to implement extreme sanitary conditions just to be on the safe side. Like I said, there are vaccines for it that if you get them young enough, it'll pretty much protect them for the rest of their life. I think it's a 2-vaccine protocol. And normally, if you do adopt an FELV cat and you happen to have one, then all is good. But if you don't, we try to prevent people from taking in a cat that has FELV if your cats don't, just because of the easily transmittable aspect of it. But like I said, he is actually 2 years old. He came in July. Like I said, we've been testing him. Those test results I told you about, the first one was a positive. We wait a while, test him again. We sent it to a lab. It came back negative. We did another one in-house, and it came back as a slight positive. So basically, it's one of those things, once you have them, you have to kind of like regularly get them checked. Like I said, it's not a death sentence like it used to be. They're very happy cats. They can live just as a happy of a life as any other cat. Their life expectancy is probably about what other cats could be. It might be a little bit shorter, but with any cat, you never know what kind of medical issue may or may not show up. So it is just another aspect of having a cat that is more likely to come up with side effects, not side effects, but side illnesses. Like I said, it could show up in, a brain tumor. It could show up in the liver. It could show up in the spinal cord, like lethargy, unable to walk. Very unlikely, but the chances are there. Like I said, it just has a tendency to cause other systemic issues, I think might be the right word. I am not positive on that. I'm gonna read a few things just because I wish I had thought about this more, but it's what I do. How is it transmitted? FELV is passed from one cat to another through saliva, blood, and to some extent, urine and feces. The virus does not live long outside the cat's body. FELV cannot be transmitted to people, dogs, or other animals. And there is no cure for FELV, but with regular vet visits and proper care, FELV positive cats can live quality lives. A nutritious diet, indoor living, which we highly recommend, and regular vet care goes a long way. Due to the very effective vaccine available, it is possible to have a mixed household, cats with FELV and cats without, as long as the cats without are vaccinated or up to date on vaccines, and I think that's where the vet reference would come in, just to be on the safe side. To lessen the possibility of anything happening, we would prefer any FELV cat to be indoor only, because we don't know anything about outside cats. So just to prevent the spread of the infection, it would be best just to keep them indoors. So, I mean, that sounds pretty straightforward. But yeah, this is Armadillo. There is a possibility that he could go home with another cat. Like I said, he is 2 years old. He does have a little bit of a shy side to him, but once he opens up, he's basically a 2-year-old cat, and he can be, I think the pleasant word to use is sassy. But like I said, he is a very sweet cat. If you're interested in him, he's got beautiful markings, and like I said, he is quite playful. So he can play just like anybody else. Just because he does have FELV, there is no real special treatment. You don't have to like tiptoe around them. They're just normal cats that have a tendency to get other issues that you may not be aware of. And what are you doing? He's like, give me the string. And like I said, he is very playful, so I think at his age, basically an older teenager, so if anybody has children, they know what teenagers are like, and I think it's one of those things to keep them active as much as possible. It's one of those hunt, catch, kill things. You can work off a lot of energy, and it gets them nice and hungry, so they eat, and then they will go to sleep. But yeah, he is very playful, so I think he would do good with cat-savvy teenagers, of course. I'm not sure about dogs, maybe with a proper introduction. We pretty much covered the cat situation, but I think he might do good with like a pretty laid-back dog. Most of the time, back in the day, we would not adopt him out except as an only cat, but recent understanding dictates as long as your cats are vaccinated against feline leukemia, then he could probably enjoy another friend. But like I said, he is a pretty sassy cat. But I've noticed things in him that are a little bit unusual. He did have a little bit of a red eye. I don't know if it's correlative to FELV. Doesn't bother him as far as like sight. It's not really an issue for him. But I think when you have them, you just be a little bit more vigilant as far as noticing things that may or may not be normal that you've noticed. Like if his eating gets decreased or something, or his drinking less water or more water. You just have to be more aware of it, and I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I would assume there's gonna be a vet reference for him just to make sure he does get the care that he needs when it arises, whatever may or may not arise. So it's something to consider, but other than that, he's a normal cat, and I think there's been a big stigma as far as FELV in cats, but I think in recent years they've made good progress as far as the vaccines and whatnot, but like I said, he just needs to be retested every few months, and like I said, talk to your vet about that, and they'll probably give you a little bit more information than me. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's part of the vaccination regime, kind of like rabies, distemper, all those. I think that's a part of the combo, is getting the FELV done for your cats, especially if they're indoor-outdoor cats. I would believe it to be a must, because we would prefer not to transmit it to any unwanted populations of cats out there. So, but no, he is a cool cat. Like I said, he's been here since the beginning of July, and like I said, he's 2 years old. So, if you are interested in him, he's like a very sweet cat. Feel free to go on the website lowellhumanesociety.org and click on him, and there might be a little bit more information. I'm having a feeling that there probably is a little bit more information. I do have a little bit of a printout here as far as basic information. And yeah, feel free to come on down. We're open Tuesday through Sunday, 12 to 4 p.m., or you can give a call and talk to an adoption counselor at 978-452-7781. And like I said, they could probably give you a little bit more information. I don't have a lot of information. I'm kind of new at this whole FELV thing. I just kind of wanted to highlight them and let people know it's not a death sentence anymore. And that's how we see. He does cat stuff. He's no different than any other cat. He's really, he's liking that. But like I said, I just wanted to highlight some of the medical issues or medical cats that we have, and I don't believe I've ever really done one for FELV, so like I said, I just want to point it out and let people know it's not as detrimental and scary as some people would think. But yeah, like I said, he's 2 years old, and as you can see, he's quite inquisitive, and he looks quite comfortable. And if anybody, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say if anybody sees this and they come down and want to adopt him, they can take that cat tree with him. I will throw that in as a parting gift. But look at how regal he looks. Look at him. That's a picturesque moment right there. I can't believe the birds have been quiet this whole time. Thank gosh. They were going off earlier. They know a lot of words. They do know some words. Armadillo knows play, food, sleep. He knows 3 words.